All right, let's just jump right in. We're going to do a little time traveling today to tell a tale of two workers. One is from the age of smokestacks and steel, back in 1890. The other, well, that's someone from our world of laptops and video calls. Same country, but you're about to see they lived in completely different worlds. So, here's the big question. What if they actually met? Seriously, what would they even say to each other? Would they even recognize what the other person does as work? That's what we're going to dig into. We're going to look at everything, their pay, the dangers they face, their family life, to see what's changed and what's kind of stayed the same.
Okay, so first things first. Let's get into the actual physical grind of the job. What was it really like to just show up and work for a day, then versus now?
Just look at these numbers. The difference is staggering, really. Back in 1890, your entire life was work. We're talking 12, maybe 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. And things like overtime pay or sick leave? Nope, forget about it. If you couldn't work, you didn't eat. It was as simple and as brutal as that. Today, our lives are still structured around work, but at least there are rules. There are laws that just didn't exist back then.
And listen, if the long hours didn't get you, the conditions very well might have. An 1890s factory was basically a jungle of unguarded gears, belts, and blades. No hard hats, no safety glasses, nothing. And you want to know the cruelest part? If you got hurt, if a machine took your finger, you were probably fired on the spot. You were no longer useful. Compare that to today, where we have this whole web of safety nets, from regulations to insurance.
This quote just really hits home, doesn't it? It makes you realize that every single safety rule we have, every piece of gear we might complain about wearing, it's a legacy. It's written in the sweat and, sometimes, the blood of the workers who came before us. We have safety today because they suffered without it.
Okay, so the work was backbreaking and it was dangerous. What was the payoff? Let's talk about the money. What were people actually taking home for all that hardship?
$1 to $2. That's it. That's what a worker typically earned for a full 12-hour day of that grueling, life-threatening labor. Just let that number sink in for a minute.
And that small handful of change, that wasn't get-ahead money. It wasn't build-a-future money. That was I hope we can eat tonight money. It was just enough to cover the bare minimum. Food on the table, a crowded room to sleep in. Saving for the future? That was a complete fantasy.
Now, obviously, we earn a lot more today, but it's not quite that simple, is it? Our paychecks are way bigger, but so is the cost of everything else. The modern pressures of just existing, I'm talking about rent, healthcare, education, these are giants that can eat up a modern salary, leaving a lot of people feeling just as squeezed, just in a very different way.
And all of this economic pressure, it didn't just affect one person's bank account. It fundamentally shaped the entire idea of what a family was for. You see, in the 1890s, the family was an economic team. It was a unit of survival, plain and simple. Everybody had to contribute. That meant children often had to work. It meant wives performed an endless marathon of demanding, unpaid labor at home. It was all hands on deck just to keep your heads above water.
This quote just nails the shift perfectly. The central mission for so many families has changed. It's moved from that daily battle for survival to the complex modern art of stress management. It's less about finding the next meal and more about juggling 2 jobs, childcare, and the constant mental load of it all.
And maybe one of the most incredible results of this whole evolution is what happened to childhood itself. I mean, look at this. It used to be normal for kids to work in factories and mines. Today, that's illegal. The idea that a kid's primary job is to go to school and just be a kid, that's actually a pretty revolutionary and modern invention.
So we've talked about the physical work, the money, and the family. But there's one more piece to this puzzle. What about the internal experience, the psychological weight of being a worker?
For that worker back in 1890, the inner feeling that dominated their life was pure physical exhaustion, a weariness that was deep in your bones, the feeling of your body being completely and utterly spent day in and day out.
Today, for so many of us, the pain has a different name: burnout. It's not the ache of tired muscles. It's the fog of a drained mind. It's that emotional exhaustion from feeling like you have to be on 24/7. Always connected, always productive.
This table lays it out so clearly. The primary fear has shifted from, will I lose a hand in that machine today, to, will I lose my job in the next round of layoffs? The dominant feeling has moved from physical exhaustion to mental burnout.
And that really is the key, isn't it?
The fundamental pressure of having to work to survive that never went away. It just changed its form. It shape-shifted. It moved from the body to the mind.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. After seeing how things stack up, we gotta ask the big question. Who really had it harder?
Well, the truth is, this isn't some contest of suffering with a clear winner. It's more like two totally different kinds of hardship. The 1890 worker endured a physical reality that is almost unimaginable to us now. But the modern worker faces a kind of constant psychological strain that their great-great-grandparents would never have even understood.
And if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this quote right here. Progress isn't some magic wand that makes all the problems disappear. History just changes the shape of our struggles. We traded the acute danger of the factory floor for the chronic anxiety of the modern workplace.
And that's why this stuff matters. It's so important to remember that the 8-hour day, the weekend, workplace safety, none of that was a gift. It was all earned. It was paid for with the exhaustion and the injuries and the suffering of the generations that came before us.
Which of course leads us with one last fascinating question to chew on. If this is how much work has been totally reshaped in the last century or so, what's it going to look like in the next one? What new kinds of pressures and what new kinds of rights will define the life of a worker in the year 2124?